Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Steven Melendez, and I'm going to be bringing you the latest and greatest in soccer news from around the world. Welcome back, everyone, to your favorite soccer podcast. I know I usually I'm talking on Sunday. However, there are just too many good things happening before then or during that time that I just wanted to get to you guys by Saturday, so that we can talk some MLS playoffs. We got some exciting domestic league games to get into, and I'm just so excited to get into all of that. So let's just get right into what we're going to be talking about in today's show. Starting with the first segment, we're going to be talking about, like I said, the MLS playoffs. I'm going to be previewing the first round of the playoffs. Of course, first I'm going to talk about the play-in round games that happened, to get us all 8 teams for the playoffs. Not really happy about what happened for my team. Of course, I'll get into that when I get there. But in the second part of the show, we're going to be talking about the top domestic league games of the weekend. Of course, we have some really exciting matchups going on in La Liga and, of course, the Premier League, and I can't wait to get into that with you guys. And in the third part of the show, the Nations League final games. Of course, those last few games of the group stage just happened, and that means we know who our final 4 are. So I'm going to be talking about those last few games, and then of course previewing quickly the final 4. And lastly, and of course certainly not least, we're going to be talking about the top 10 Sweden players right now, because like I said, I'm going to be going through the top 20 countries in the FIFA World Rankings. Sweden is at number 19, so they are next on my list. So let's just get started and talk about the MLS Playoff Preview. Starting with the play-in rounds, we first had the 8th-seeded New England Revolution taking on the 9th-seeded Montreal Impact. And if you guys didn't know how this worked, whichever team, with the lower seed won between, this 7th to 10th, play-in round matchups, they would take on the first seed in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, of course. And then the higher seed of the winners here would take on the second seed. So with that being said, let's now get into the games. Of course, we had the New England Revolution and the Montreal Impact. And the 8th-seeded New England Revolution won 2-1. They dominated this game. They had 66% possession. They had 25 shots to Montreal's 9. And this was kind of expected, because when you look at the standings and just, how Montreal were playing this season, they had one of the worst defenses. They actually had the worst defense in the entire MLB Eastern Conference, while for the New England Revolution, they had one of the best. So this was a tale of just, one team that is certainly much more organized and just better overall, while Montreal Impact just barely made it into that 9th seed. But they certainly made it a game, because the best player for New England Revolution, Carlos Gil, scored in the 38th minute to make it 1-0, and then in the second half, Romel Kyoto, the star striker for Montreal, scored to make it 1-1 and made it equalize. So Montreal, despite them being completely dominated in possession and just barely being able to get shots in the New England Revolution final third, they made it a game. And even going into extra time, this game was tied. And a lot of people thought, okay, we're going to get we're gonna get into that extra time. We're not going to. This isn't gonna end in regulation. But then Gustavo Bo, with probably no time left, scored the game winner, sending New England Revolution into the first round of the playoffs. Just a huge, huge win for the New England Revolution. And they certainly deserved it. I mean, they were dominating this game. They were much more organized and were just playing overall better than Montreal. But you gotta give respect to Montreal to at least make this a game, because unlike a team I'm about to talk about, Montreal at least made this play-in round game fun to watch. Now we're gonna go on to the next game that has the two inaugural teams playing against each other, both clearly heading in different directions here, because you have the 7th seed Nashville SC versus the 10th seed Inter Miami team. And Inter Miami were absolutely dominated in this game, 3-0. You cannot look at the stats to really tell you how this went, because Nashville absolutely dominated. From the tip, it was clear that there was just a different level of quality amongst these teams. It obviously doesn't help that Inter Miami didn't have Gonzalo Higuain, or I guess either Higuain brothers. They didn't have Leandro Gonzalez Pires. They were missing a lot of players, a lot of key players. Their starting goalkeeper, Luis Robles, was injured. There were so many things that were going against Inter Miami in this game. But even with that, they still have players. They still had Rodolfo Pizarro. They still had Blaise Matuidi. I expected so much better than this, getting just absolutely thrashed 3-0. I mean, that opening goal from Randall Leal was ridiculous. I mean, nobody was stopping that. And just to tell you, like, the game was summed up in one play. An Inter Miami defender had the ball, passing it back to the goalkeeper, McCarty. And he absolutely whiffed on the clearance kick. Like, he was going to kick the ball to send it down the field. He completely missed it. And it goes past him. Obviously, it wasn't an own goal. Thank goodness. That would have even been even more embarrassing. But it goes and Nashville get a corner kick. Now, if he just owns up to his mistake, I would have been like, I mean, it still would have sucked. But he actually was like, bro, come on, you got to give it to me better. Like, dude, what? No, man. You got to actually kick the ball. You're a soccer player. Whatever. In my opinion, that pretty much summed up the game. Inter Miami had absolutely no chance in this game. Even though the possession shows that Inter Miami had more possession, yes, they got into the game a little bit more, but they just couldn't do anything in the final third. It just never felt like they really threatened Nashville at any point. And that's why Nashville are heading on to the next round and taking on the Toronto FC. So now let's get into those first round matchups. I'm just going to quickly go over the key players for each team, and then I'm going to give you a game prediction. So first we have the first-seeded Philadelphia Union. We're going to first talk about the Eastern Conference. We got the first-seeded Philadelphia Union versus the 8th-seeded New England Revolution. Philadelphia Union were by far the best team in the Eastern Conference and probably the best team in the entire MLS this season. They were first in the Eastern Conference in goals scored, first in goals allowed, and that's all due part to the young midfielder Brendan Aronson. He had 4 goals, 7 assists this season. Super smart playmaker. I mean, one of the most promising young players for the USMNT. And it's actually, after this season, he's actually transferring to RB Salzburg and is going to be getting his first look of European competition. Just huge. You also got probably the best goalkeeper in the entire MLS right now, Andre Blake, had 8 clean sheets. I mean, he just with this incredible season, he's catapulted himself to the best goalkeeper in the MLS. And then, of course, you had forward Kasper Prizbelko, 8 goals, 6 assists. He had a strong first season in 2019 with the Union, and has continued to play at a high level. I mean, it helps to have a great midfield behind you, of course, but Prizbelko is a premier target man in the MLS who is also an underrated passer. You also got to look at some guys like Kai Wagner, Mark McKenzie, Jose Martinez, and of course Jamiro Montero. I mean, there's a reason this team is as good as they are, and It's because they have so many players, it's just hard to really say them all. And then for New England Revolution, I mean, I just talked about them, but Matt Turner's a big-time player for them, Carlos Gil, Adam Buxa, Gustavo Bo, all those players, big-time for them, and will be extremely important for them to try to make this a game, but I just don't expect that to happen. I see Philadelphia Union winning this easily, 2-0, maybe even 3-0. So expect this to be an easy win for the first-seeded Philadelphia Union. Next, we have Toronto FC, the second seed, versus Nashville FC, SC. And I feel like this certainly is going to be a much tighter competition because I feel like Nashville are just way more organized. They're not very strong in the offensive end, but their defense is impeccable. First let's talk about Toronto. They were tied for the 5th best offensive team in the Eastern Conference with 33 goals scored. They allowed 26 goals, which is good for 7th. So they weren't really dominant in either one side, but they were just good enough on both and just had, really good star power. I mean, obviously you have to start it off with Alejandro Pozuelo, 9 goals, 9 assists. Finalists for the MVP award, just incredibly fun to watch. You got the youngster Ayo Akinolo, 11 starts, 9 goals, just one of the top emerging talents in the MLS. Even with Josie Altidore coming back, they still needed to start him because he's been that good. And then, of course, Pablo Piatti, 4 goals, 3 assists, brought a dynamic attacking presence to Toronto FC, created so much offense for the team, which was extremely needed, especially with Altidore missing most of the season. Of course, you also got to look at Richie Lariea, Michael Bradley, fullback Aro. Now, for Nashville SC, they have, in my opinion, one of the best defenses in the entire MLS, and it all starts with Walker Zimmerman. You also got Randall Leal, super strong player. Who's that other guy? That played on the team. Dax McCarty was also huge. Hani Mukhtar was huge today or yesterday for them against Inter Miami. Dominic Badji, Daniel Lovitz, they just have a lot of players. Joe Willis, the goalkeeper, has been really good as well. They just have so many strong players, and they play strong for one another. And I feel like that's the most important thing. So I feel like this is going to be an extremely close game, but I don't think they're going to really upset Toronto. I think it'll be close. I see it being like a 2-1 victory for Toronto, but nothing more than that. Next, we have Columbus Crew, the 3rd seed, versus the 6th-seeded New York Red Bulls. Columbus had the 2nd best defense in the Eastern Conference with 21 goals allowed, and they had the 4th best offense with 36 goals scored. And a lot of that has to do with these 3 players, Gyasi Zardes, Darlington Nagbe, and Jonathan Mensah. Zardes now has a couple seasons in a row scoring double digits, has been absolutely sensational for the Columbus Crew, and is considered one of the best strikers in the entire MLS. You got Darlington Nagbe, probably the best holding midfielder in the MLS right now. Has excellent technical ability and great passing. He can pretty much do anything you need him to on the pitch, and has become one of the better midfielders in the MLS, like I said. And then you got Jonathan Mensah. He somehow found a way to improve his game at the age of 30 and became a key piece for the Columbus backline. That was as good as they were all season. His ability to on the ball is much better than previous years, and he is an essential leader on the pitch. You can also look at Pedro Santos, Lucas Zalarayan, and Eloy Room. For the New York Red Bulls, they had the 8th best offense, 9th best defense, so obviously not great in any one area, not even good, I would say, but they did just enough to get enough points to get a 6th seed. You look at Kyle Duncan, he's probably, in my opinion, probably one of the better young players in the MLS, and probably the best player on this team. He's got 3 goals, 4 assists this season. You got Aaron Long, Kaku, all played intricate roles for this team. And then, of course, you got to look at Daniel Royer as well, Tim Parker. But then, really, I just don't feel like the New York Red Bulls have enough to really halt the Columbus Crew. I just feel like they have too much quality on their team, and I see them winning comfortably 3-1. It could be 3-2, but I doubt it. I don't see New York Red Bulls putting together that much offense. Next, we have Orlando City, the 4th seed versus the 5th seeded New York City FC. And for Orlando City, this is their first ever playoffs. They rode a pretty much great overall team. They had the second best offense in the Eastern Conference with 40 goals scored, and they were tied for the 4th best defense. And a lot of that has to do with Chris Mueller, Nani, and Mauricio Pereira. I mean, Chris Mueller just broke out this season and is one of the better players this season, honestly, overall this year. Definitely the best player on Orlando City. Nani, one of the most decorated players in the MLS, and at any point can be the best player on the field. And Mauricio Pereira, one of probably the best playmaker on this team, and one of the best playmakers in the entire MLS. You also got to look at goalkeeper Pedro Galesi, the young forward Daryl Dike. And for New York City FC, I mean, they had the 3rd best offense in the Eastern Conference and tied for the 4th best defense. They have one of the best right backs in the world, not in the world, in the MLS. Anton Tinnerholm had 4 goals, 5 assists, and is an extremely consistent and all-around fullback. You really never have to worry about him not giving his all on a given night. Dependable defender, while also being able to contribute in the attack, as you can see by his stats. Maxie Morales dealt with a lot of injuries this season. Is coming off an incredible 7-goal, 20-assist year. But with those injuries, he hasn't been able to be fit for most of the season, but has already played a big part for this team towards the end of the year, and with his 1 goal and 4 assists, and will be extremely important for their success in the playoffs. And Alexander Ring, the captain, I mean, he is an extremely good ball winner, and is their deep-lying playmaker, has 4 goals, 4 assists, and will be extremely important for them. And I do see New York City FC pulling off this upset. It will be close. I think it'll be a 2-2 game, and it'll go into penalties, and they win 4-3 on penalties. Now in the Western Conference, we got the 1st-seeded Sporting Kansas City against the 8th-seeded San Jose Earthquakes. I mean, Sporting Kansas City were just a very solid overall team, had the 4th best offense in the Western Conference and the 3rd best defense. You got to look at Johnny Russell, one of the best wingers in the game, Alan Pulido, one of the better forwards in the game, and Gary Kinda, I mean, just absolutely dominates that midfield, is a true box-to-box midfielder, and takes care of the attacking and defensive responsibilities for Sporting Kansas City. Also got to look at the veteran Graham Zusi, midfielder Gianluca Busio, and Roberto Punchik. And for San Jose Earthquakes, the worst defense in the league. That's what you got, at least the worst defense, in the entire league. Of course, it doesn't help that they were in a very high-scoring conference. And it certainly helps that they had the 6th best scoring in the entire Western Conference. And a lot of that has to do with Christian Espinosa, one of the better playmakers in the entire MLS, Chris Wondolowski, the legendary Chris Wondolowski, who is now in his final season and is the all-time leading scorer in the MLS history. You also got to look at Nick Lima, Andres Rios, Oswaldo Alanes. But I just don't see San Jose Earthquakes being able to stop Sporting Kansas City, and I feel like they win comfortably 4-1. Now we move on to the 2nd, 7th seed matchup between Seattle Sounders and LAFC. This is the most exciting one of the entire MLS playoffs. And you look at it, and with Seattle Sounders, I mean, they got the 3rd best offense and 1st and the best defense in the Western Conference. And you look at their team, they got Raul Ruidiaz, made his presence in the MLS known right away, and has scored double-digit goals ever since. Has actually increased his goals and assist numbers every single season since joining the MLS. You got Jordan Morris, one of the finalists for the MLS MVP, has transformed his game into being one of the more all-around attackers in the MLS. And then, of course, goalkeeper Steven Fry, one of the most consistent goalkeepers in the entire MLS, and possibly just behind just one of the better goalkeepers in the entire MLS, no doubt about it. You also got to look at Yamir Andrade, Kelvin Leardom, and Nuho Tolo as well, all on the back line and very important to Seattle's success. And for LAFC, you obviously got to look at Carlos Vela, probably the best player in the entire MLS, but is returning from injury and has practically made his return seamless to the team. And he's certainly a big-time X factor for them. They have the best scoring team in the entire MLS, have the 8th best defense in the Western Conference, so they certainly lack there. But the duo of Diego Rossi and Carlos Vela is going to take this team far. Of course, Bradley Wright Phillips has been a great replacement for Carlos Vela, but I feel like Seattle Sounders win this game. Technically they draw in regulation 3-3 and go 5-4 in penalties. So it's going to be very, very exciting. Now, you got the 3rd-seeded Timbers versus the 6th-seeded FC Dallas. And for the Timbers, I mean, you got the 2nd-best offense. They got Diego Chara, Diego Valeri, and, of course, Jorge Villafana. Diego Valeri, obviously a legend for the club and is going to be extremely important in getting the tempo into the Timbers' favor. Jorge Villafana and Diego Chara, obviously great playmakers, and will be extremely important. You can also look at Eric Williamson and Felipe Mora, but it's going to hurt to not have Sebastian Blanco. And for FC Dallas, they got Ryan Hollingshead. They got the 2nd-best defense, by the way, in the Western Conference. Extremely important to say. But then they also got Michael Barrios and Franco Jara. Barrios and Jara formed a really strong duo, and obviously Hollingshead, one of the best fullbacks in the MLS. You got to also look at Thiago Dos Santos, Matt Hedges. I actually feel like Dallas can get the upset here. Even though Portland Timbers were considered one of the better teams early on in the season, I feel like Dallas with their defense and will get enough on the defense, on the offensive end to win this game. And I actually think they're going to win comfortably 3-1. And last, we're going to have the 4th-seeded Minnesota United versus the 5th-seeded Colorado Rapids. For the Minnesota United, they had the 5th-best offense, 4th-best defense. You got the running back. You got the right back, Romain Montanier, one of the better fullbacks in the entire MLS. Mainly known for his strong defense, but he's also able to get forward and contribute in attack consistently. You have Robin Lod, 7 goals, 5 assists, an extremely versatile player, and is the main piece of that attack. And then, of course, you got Kevin Molino, 9 goals, 4 assists. After dealing with a grueling leg injury 2 years ago, he's come back with 2 strong seasons in a row and can do just about anything on the offensive end, whether creating for himself or his teammates. You also got to look at Jose Aja and John Gregus, just big-time players. And, of course, for Colorado Rapids, you got the 7th best offense, 5th best defense, and it all starts with the youngster Cole Bassett. I mean, the youngest signing in club history, just continues to make big strides. And even at such a young age, Bassett always seems to make the right decisions and is extremely unselfish. On top of that, he has an incredible motor and allows him to play box to box. He's got 5 goals and 5 assists this season. Just unbelievable from him. You got the left back, Sam Vines, another academy product from the Rapids, has emerged as a regular starter at left back and is an extremely talented defender. This season, he has also turned his strong play into goals and assists, and it looks like his growth will just continue from here. And then, of course, you got Jack Price, the leader of this team and probably the best playmaker on the team as well. Certainly has a lot of experience and will be very important for this young Colorado Rapids team. You also got to look at Kellen Acosta, Lalas Abubakar. But honestly, I just don't think they will do enough. I feel like the veterans usually win out in games like these. And for Colorado Rapids, leaning on young players like Bassett and Vines is going to hurt them. So I see Minnesota United winning a narrow game 2-1. So that's going to wrap it up for this segment. Make sure you guys stick around because when I come back, I'm going to be talking about the top domestic league games of the weekend. So stick around, guys.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back, everyone. If you missed the last segment, we went over the MLS Playoffs, just previewed each of the games going on in the first round. Of course, talked about those play-in round games as well. And of course, I gave you guys those predictions too. So now we're going to be talking about the top 10. No, not top 10. I'm thinking way too far ahead. But I'm talking about now the top domestic league games going on this weekend. Mainly, we got a few Premier League games. We got a couple Serie A, Bundesliga, La Liga. I'm sorry, Liga, you just don't have anything worth talking about right now. I'll recap a game that happened that has me absolutely stunned, but for the most part, we're going to be talking about the other four leagues. So let's just get right into it, starting with the Premier League. And we first get a very, very interesting matchup between Manchester City and Tottenham. You get two of the best teams in the entire division at the moment, and it's Tottenham at home. They're second in the Premier League with a 5-2-1 record. They've scored 19 goals, good for second in the entire Premier League, allowed only 9, which is, I believe, tied for the best in the entire Premier League. So they're playing extremely well right now, and they've won 4 of their last 5 games. That includes... games against West Brom. They beat Brighton. They beat, Burnley as well. West Ham, they drew against West Ham, but then they had that 6-1 thrashing of Manchester United. So obviously they've taken care of business against some of the lower division teams, which is what they're supposed to do. Even though they haven't been absolutely dominant games, they've won by 1 in each of them. They still took care of business in those games, and they obviously still have Europa League games in between that, which they have coming up next week against Ludogorets. They have a big-time game against Manchester City, who have right now, not really played all that well. 7 games in, they've got 3 wins, 3 draws, and a loss. They've only scored 10 goals in their first 7 games and have allowed 9. That's really not the kind of start that you were expecting from a team like Manchester City. And, some of those games have been kind of pedestrian. They had that 1-1 draw against Liverpool, which was an extremely exciting game if you got to watch it. They beat Man City. They're obviously dominating in their Champions League group. But then a draw against West Ham. They beat Arsenal 1-0. And then also another draw against Leeds United. It just has not been very consistent from Manchester City in the Premier League. You can really say that about both Manchester teams, but we'll talk about the other one soon. But it's just they obviously going to want to get a result here. They're 12 points. They have 12 points right now with 7 games, 5 points behind Tottenham. Obviously, Tottenham have a game in hand since Manchester City weren't able to play the first game of the season because it got postponed because of all the games that they played early, late in the last year. But this is going to be a very exciting game. Like I said, they're 2 of the best teams in the entire league. You got guys like Harry Kane, Song for Tottenham that are 2, probably the best duo right now in the entire world of soccer. The way those 2 guys have been able to play is just it's kind of ridiculous, to be honest. But you also got obviously Gareth Bale, who really hasn't been able to find his footing with the team yet. But he's obviously still there, and he's gonna play a big part. Pierre-Emile Forsberg is another guy. Matt Doherty, those 2, Sergio Reguilon, those 4 guys really all recently joined the team and are playing a big part for them. Steven Bergwijn as well, and Dombele. You got a lot of guys on this team that are certainly, and obviously can't forget the goalkeeper Hugo Lloris. All of them playing an extremely strong part for this team. And you got to expect them to put up an extremely good fight. But Manchester City, I mean, even though they haven't been playing well in the Premier League, they did have that stalemate against Liverpool. They got incredibly top talent. I mean, you're talking Kevin De Bruyne, probably the best player in the entire Premier League, Raheem Sterling, Rodri, Ferran Torres, who's been playing great. I mean, he's played great for Spain. I mean, obviously, he's still trying to get his legs under him in the Premier League, which takes some time for any young player. Of course, Sergio Aguero, Gabriel Jesus, Nathan Ac has been great. Ruben Diaz has taken a little bit to get used to Premier League play as well, which was expected. And honestly, most of Pep Guardiola's defensive signings don't usually pan out too well. So but Nathan Ac's actually been not bad, but he's used to that Premier League game coming from Bournemouth. So obviously he's used to that. And then you obviously got Ederson, one of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League and pretty much in the world. So obviously you got one of those top premier matchups in the Premier League, and it's going to be a very exciting one to watch. But I actually expect this one to have a few scores. I mean, why not? You have dynamic attacks on both sides, but I feel like Tottenham actually continue their streak, and they actually beat Manchester City 3-2. I do see that happening. So Tottenham gets those 3 points, and Manchester City continue to falter in the Premier League. Next, we have Liverpool versus Leicester City, two of the top 3 clubs in the Premier League right now. I mean, in my opinion, what Leicester have been able to do with the amount of injuries that they've had is borderline incredible. I mean, 2 of their best defensive players have been out with significant injuries, and they're still tied for the least goals allowed in the league. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And they did lose 2 games in a row, and it was to pedestrian competition. I do remember, yes, they lost to West Ham and then Aston Villa 2 games in a row, getting shut out in both. Kind of felt like they were losing that momentum that they had early on in the season, which when I was really seeing that, I was looking at it as it was expected, because it's hard to imagine Leicester City able to continue to play at the level that they have been playing without literally 2 of their best players in Wilfred Ndidi and what was the other guy? Pereira. It's just Ricardo Pereira. It just was not expected, but they've won 3 games in a row since then, and obviously a big part of that has to go to Jamie Vardy, James Maddison, the replacement for what's his name, Ben Chilwell, and Timothy Castagne, Kasper Schmeichel. All those guys have played. Yuri Tillemans as well have all played huge parts for this team, and I mean, they're first in the division, man. I mean, they're first in the league, and I mean, you can't really say anything else but just be completely impressed with them. I mean, they've got a win against Wolves in their last game. They got that revenge against Leeds United, not revenge against Leeds United, but they just they throttled them 4-1. They've been dominating in their Europa League group, so they're taking care of business there. They beat Arsenal in one of their last games, and now they take a huge test against Liverpool, who obviously, haven't been, the world beaters that you would, that you've expected. I mean, obviously in the Champions League, they're taking care of business, but, they beat West Ham 2-1, Sheffield United, who are the worst team in this entire division. I keep saying division, but in this entire league, 2-1. They drew against Everton, who had a red card in that game. They got beat by Aston Villa 7-2. So, it's been a little bit of a slow start for Liverpool, but for them to still be 3rd place, even with that slow start, really speaks to how incredibly strong that team is. And that's why they're title contenders. So this is going to be a very exciting game to watch. I mean, it could go either way. I do see this probably ending in a draw. It would be Leicester City's first draw this year, so obviously people are probably thinking that might not be likely, but I do see that happening, probably being either a 1-1 or a 2-2 draw. I don't see this going goalless. No way, no how. I mean, with the amount of players that Liverpool has, like Sadio Mane, Salah, Thiago Alcantara, obviously they're missing big time players like Van Dijk. They were able to get Alisson back. I did see that Jordan Henderson was injured. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to play this game, but obviously Roberto Firmino playing so well for his country right now in the CONMEBOL World Cup qualifiers, which we've talked about, you guys know. and obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold, Andrew Robertson, just big-time players up and down this roster. And so there's no way that this team is going to get shut out. So expect this to be a very highly contested game, one of the, probably the best one this entire weekend among pretty much any league you can look for. And it's going to be, bring out the popcorn, man. It's going to be fireworks. So that's going to wrap it up for the Premier League. Now we're going to move on to Serie A. And there's really only two games. I mean, really one game that's really exciting to watch, and that's Napoli versus AC Milan, no doubt. I mean, you got two of the best teams in the entire league. I mean, you got AC Milan, number one, who haven't lost a game in Serie A. Then you have Napoli, who even with that loss to Juventus, that was like one of those 3-0, like I don't know how you call them, but those withdrawal losses that they were just deducted a point as well. They're still right there in the thick of the title race. 14 points, 3 behind Milan. So this is a huge time game for them. And both these teams are pretty even in terms of goals scored and goals allowed. I mean, Milan's just scored one more goal than Napoli have this season. And I mean, there's a big reason why AC Milan are where they are. I mean, they got a great collection of players. I mean, you got Zlatan Ibrahimovic, of course, Hakan Kahanoglu, Sandro Tonoli has been a huge addition for them. Even though he's super young, he's already shown skills beyond his years. I mean, of course, one of the best fullbacks in the entire world in Theo Hernandez. Who else you got there? Rafael Leao has been huge on the wing. Diego Dalot, Gianluigi Donnarumma. I mean, the goalkeeper, he's been huge for them, a great leader between the sticks. There were so many talks about him possibly leaving AC Milan, but that was obviously very smart for them to keep him because, it's not easy to get, a big-time goalkeeper between the sticks. Most teams usually like to hold on to them. So be able to hold on to Donnarumma is huge. And, of course, Ante Rebic as well, big-time player for them. Romagnoli, big-time player. That recent signing of Jens Peter Hage has been huge for the midfield. I mean, obviously he hasn't played that much, but still, it does its work, and eventually you're going to see him play more and more. But there's a reason AC Milan, have dominated in their Europa League. Obviously, losing to Lille 3-0 in their last Europa League group match wasn't really what people expected. I was expecting more of a closer game than that, but with AC Milan actually edging. But Lille were able to actually dominate that game. They have another game against them coming up this Thursday, so that's going to be extremely exciting to watch. But they did recently draw against Verona. That was their last Serie A match, and before that they beat Udinese 2-1. So they haven't really been as dominant in the they've kind of settled down a bit from their hot start, or cooled down a bit, I should say, from their hot start. And now they get a big test against Napoli. They've already been tested this season, taking on Inter Milan and defeating them 2-1. So can they do it again? Can they step up again and take on a team like Napoli, who haven't, in my opinion, haven't been as one of those world beaters, even though they do have 5 wins in 7 games. They did defeat Real Sociedad in the Europa League, who have been one of the better teams in La Liga. They beat Atalanta 4-1. That was extremely impressive. They did absolutely wreck Genoa 6-0. So, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. They have been an extremely strong team. But they lost their last they lost one of their last games to Sasuolo 2-0. That was a huge game between, two of the top teams in this division. I keep saying division, but in this league. And I mean, this is one of those games where they got to step up and have a big, and actually show up. They can't get a clean sheet put on them by AC Milan, because then it's gonna look like, sure, they can beat those bad teams and take care of business there, but when it comes to the big teams, they're a notch below them. This is a test. Can they answer that call? I mean, that we're gonna have to wait and see on that. But if they do win this game, that's gonna be huge. And I do like their players. I love Victor Osimhen. Obviously, they got one of the better center backs in the world in Kalidou Koulibaly. Dries Mertens, Lorenzo Insigne, Herving Lozano, Milik. I mean, their attack is absolutely versatile. Zielinski. What was their other guy? Politano has been huge, and obviously they got the goalkeeper David Ospina, who's as consistent as they come, and obviously overall their team is extremely solid. Bakayoko as well in the midfield, but they just need to answer this call and find a way to get a result against a big-time club like AC Milan. So this is going to be a huge matchup to watch in Serie A, and I'm excited to see what happens there. And the other game I'm going to be talking about is Sassuolo versus Verona. And Verona have, they're not really, big-time players. I mean, they've got 3 wins, 3 draws, and a loss. So, I mean, in 7 games. So, I mean, that's not terrible. They do have one of the best, actually the best defense in Serie A so far, with only 5 goals allowed in their 7 games. So, that's the reason I'm really excited about this game, because it's the best defense versus the best offense in Serie A in Sassuolo. And they have ridden that best offense to second place in the entire league with 4 wins, 3 draws, and no losses. So, there's a lot of things riding in this game. I mean, if Verona can somehow find a way to win, they tie Sassuolo in points, and put themselves up there with one of the best teams. I mean, one of the most surprising teams. Of course, there's still a lot of time to go, but you look at the teams in between Verona and number 1. I mean, you got Inter Milan, Atalanta, Juve, Roma, Napoli, Sassuolo, and AC Milan. All those other teams, and even behind Verona, you got Lazio. So obviously Verona are one of those outlier teams, mixed in there with the teams that you usually expect to be up there at the top. And can they keep it up? Can they keep up that level of production? Can they continue to play extremely strong defense? I mean, you go and look at the teams that they've played. I mean, they had a very strong tie, like I said, against AC Milan, 2-2. They drew against Juve, 1-1. They beat Benevento 3-1. They drew against Genoa 0-0. That's kind of a bad loss or a bad draw there. They were able to beat Roma, even though I think this was let me see. Yeah, I believe this game was the one where it got called into a 3-0 loss for Roma because of a roster error. So I mean, you can't really take that. So obviously that's a big reason why they're also up there. But still, to have the best defense in a league like Serie A that, prides itself on being the best attacking league in the entire world, that's impressive in of itself. So I'm very excited to see if Verona can halt Sassuolo's high-octane attack. Next, we're going to move on to the Bundesliga, and it's the same thing as Serie A. It's not really too many crazy games, so I kind of just picked 2 of the better teams in the league. Obviously, starting with Bayern Munich as they take on Werder Bremen. And one of the reasons I'm really excited to see this game, I mean, Werder Bremen have obviously corrected some of the issues that they had last year with one of their worst seasons ever in their history, almost getting relegated to Bundesliga 2. And, they're 9th place. I mean, they got 2 wins, 4 draws, and a loss. Have been pretty much average this season with 9 goals scored, 9 allowed in 7 games. And the main reason I'm excited about this game is because Werder Bremen have a USA prospect and Josh Sargent. I'm really excited to see how he plays against Bayern Munich and their ridiculous team. And they've been obviously just as good as advertised. I mean, 6 wins in 7 games. Obviously, they had that crazy loss to Hoffenheim where they lost, 4-1? Just ridiculous to even think. And I mean, and Werder Bremen aren't like one of the surprise teams. I mean, the surprise team really is Union Berlin being 5th with 12 points in 7 games. So, I mean, that's easily the most surprising team, and with their 16 goals scored, 7 allowed. I mean, I'm getting off topic, but still, that's easily the biggest surprise in the Bundesliga. But really, most of the teams that are playing this week, are either taking on a team lower in the division. I keep saying that. In the league, and really I'm just excited to see how Sargent really plays against Bayern Munich. And obviously we know what Bayern Munich have there, one of the top teams in the entire world, really, with guys like Serge Gnabry, Robert Lewandowski, Thomas Müller, Alphonso Davies, who really hasn't even gotten into a rhythm this season. They haven't really used him as much as you would expect. I mean, the last game that they played where they beat Borussia Dortmund 2-1, he didn't even start. Did he? Yeah, they're using Lucas Hernandez in that spot, and he's off the bench. And he actually wasn't even playing. I don't know whether he's injured or not, but he hasn't really been a big part of of Bayern Munich's season. So even with that, to see Bayern Munich still be one of the best teams in this division, in this league, and continue to just score at a ridiculous rate. I mean, they've scored 27 goals so far. The next highest team the next highest scoring team is Union Berlin with 16. So, I mean, they're by far the better team. I mean, they've just allowed the most goals, or at least, bottom half of the table type of defense, with 11 goals allowed. I mean, you look at some of the other teams in this top 5. I mean, you look at RB Leipzig, they've allowed only 4, Dortmund only 5, Leverkusen 8, Union Berlin 7, Wolfsburg 5. So, I mean, that's maybe the only, weakness of Bayern Munich. But we knew this. I mean, because, yes, they have Sewell, Jerome Boateng, who's kind of getting up there in age now. Javi Martinez, same thing, also getting up there in age. And then you got Joshua Kimmich, who also, who can play some center defensive mid, play some right back. But for the most part, they're mainly a ridiculously explosive offensive team. And their defense usually uses a high, back line to really mess with the offense. But that opens a lot of stuff up. So it'll be interesting to see if Josh Sargent can make those runs to really open things up for Werder Bremen and maybe score a goal. I mean, he's already got a goal and an assist so far this season. So I'm excited to see if that turns out. Now I'm going to just move on to La Liga now, because this is where I'm really excited to see, because we have two very exciting matchups. First, we got Villarreal versus Real Madrid, and those are, it's a top 4 matchup right now. Real Madrid haven't been as consistent as you would expect. I mean, obviously they still have a game in hand on the team ahead of them, like Real Sociedad and Villarreal, but they got 16 points in 8 games, 5 wins, a draw, and 2 losses, and those 2 losses came recently. They lost to Valencia, of all teams, Valencia, 4-1, and then they lost to, where's the other one? And then, oh my God, I didn't even know this. And then they lost to Cadiz, the recently promoted side, 1-0. So look, that's just that's a lapse in concentration and effort, because there's absolutely no way that a team like Real Madrid should, and then in between those games, they beat Barcelona 3-1. So it's just them not showing up. I mean, it did seem like they had turned the corner after beating Inter Milan 3-2 in the Champions League and, got back in the group. But then to lose 4-1 to Real Madrid, that's terrible. And to give up, and on top of that, those 4 goals, 3 penalties, and an own goal from Verona. So it's absolutely mental, lapses in their mental or errors or something like that. I'm making my words mixed up, but still, it's just mental lapses. You gotta see, it's just terrible with the kind of talent that they have on this team. And Sergio Ramos played, Courtois was there, Benzema, I don't know, Marco Asensio, Isco, Modric was playing. I know Kroos came off the bench, Kroos came off the bench. Even Odegaard came off the bench. Rodrigo, I don't know. It's just what a terrible outing. So now they got to try to turn that around, taking on one of the better teams in La Liga in Villarreal, and they've been getting results. I mean, they got 5 wins, 3 draws, and a loss. Obviously, Paco Alcácer, Dani Parejo, Gerard Moreno, Pervis Estupiñán. They have a lot of players that can really get up in the attack. Takefusa Kubo has been huge as well. And you just, you got to really expect them to put a lot of pressure on Real Madrid's defense. And a defense that usually I would expect to be one of the best in the entire division. But they have been a mess, clearly. And I expect this to be a close game. I mean, Real Madrid should win it because they have more talent, but I mean, talent doesn't usually win out. I mean, and clearly you're seeing that. And then the last game, we have Atletico Madrid versus Barcelona. Obviously, one of the premier matchups in in La Liga. And Barcelona have been one of the biggest disappointments so far in La Liga. 3 wins, 2 draws, and 2 losses in their first 7 games. I mean, obviously, they've only played 7 games, so they have, a bit more. They have a few games in hand against on some of the teams ahead of them, but I don't know. It's just you need to see more. You need to see more there, and they could get a win. I mean, but Atletico Madrid, they haven't lost a single game in their 7 matches. They've got 5 wins, 2 draws in their 7 games. Have allowed just 2 goals in those 7 games. So obviously by far the best defense. This is the kind of defense that I expected from Real Madrid, but you're getting it from the other Madrid club, and for good reason. Obviously Diego Simeone, one of the best, if not the best defensive-minded manager in the entire world, and he's showing that this season. But the fact that they're also able to score 17 goals, which is good for second in the entire league, it just goes to show that offense is starting to creep back. I mean, João Felix is playing like probably the best player in the entire league, and I mean, it's going to be a very fun matchup to watch. I mean, Luis Suarez taking on his former team, that's obviously the big-time headline there, and I'm just really excited to see what happens here. You might see a high-scoring game and one that comes down to the wire. So that's going to wrap it up for this segment. Make sure you guys stick around, because when I come back, I'm going to be talking about the Nations League final games and just giving you guys a quick preview of the Final Four.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back, everyone. If you missed the last segment, we went over the top domestic league games going on this weekend. Just gave you guys a little preview of each of the games. We have some exciting ones going on. And now we're going to be talking about the final games of the Nations League group stage. And I'm going to be previewing the Final Four as well. I mean, of course, I'm going to do a quick review of how the groups ended, which teams are going to be going to League B, and of course, which teams are finally making it into that last stage last phase of the Nations League. So let's just get right into it, starting with the first game, of the final, day of the Nations League, Belgium versus Denmark. And this was a very, big time game because, you had Denmark just 2 points behind Belgium. They had a huge chance to shock the world and beat Belgium and go on to that Final Four. However, that did not turn out to be the case because Denmark lost 4-2 to Belgium, which, when you really think about it, that's expected because Belgium, one of the best, if not, or actually, I believe in terms of FIFA World Rankings, they're number 1 right now. So, when they have a game like this, where obviously, their chance to win the Nations League is in the balance, or even just win the group is in the balance, they're obviously going to take care of business, put out their best talent, and win this game. And they certainly got off to an extremely hot start with a really nice goal from Yuri Tillemans. you don't really get a lot of goals from him, but he's certainly one of those young talents that can pretty much do it all from the midfield, and he showed you his scoring ability there. Really nice goal from outside the box, from really way out, and it took, before he got the ball, there was a few deflections, but clearly Belgium was putting a lot of pressure on Denmark in their final third, and they were able to get that early lead. Now, it didn't last very long because Jonas Wind scored his equalizer in the 17th minute, and it was a very nice put-together goal, even though it was, it did pretty much happen because of a a deflection that literally ended up right in Wind's area, and he was able to head it home past Courtois. But for the most part, still Denmark were able to get that opportunity in there and really take advantage of it and score the goal. Now, for most of this game, because it did go into halftime tied 1-1. This game was pretty close. The possession was pretty even. Belgium didn't really dominate the game. Each team had the same amount of shots. Belgium were just a little bit more clinical in front of goal. And really the only reason Denmark were able to get that second goal was because late in the game, Courtois made a terrible mistake of trying to stop the ball with his studs, and it went right underneath his foot, and it went right into the goal, which rarely happens, especially for a goalkeeper of his caliber. But it did happen there, and technically Nasser Chadli was given the own goal, but it was Courtois' fault. The pass was fine. He just tried to stop it. Instead of trying to stop it with his foot, he tried to stop it with the bottom of his foot, which, that's not the smart way to do it. But before it got to that point, Lukaku showed why he is the number 9 for Belgium. The strength that this man has is absolutely ridiculous. First of all, gotta give huge props to Tielemans to have the heads up of, even after a foul was called, he quickly placed the ball down and passed it to Kevin De Bruyne while the Denmark defenders were still trying to argue the call. And De Bruyne was able to find Lukaku making a run inside to the box. Lukaku's strength to hold off the defender and then just kick it home was incredible. Just overall that play by the Belgium side was very strong. Tielemans to De Bruyne to Lukaku. It was beautiful. And literally 12 minutes after that, Lukaku scored a ridiculous header. I believe it was a cross from Hazard. What's his name? Because it's not Eden Hazard, it's his brother, Thorgan Hazard. And he delivered a perfect cross to Lukaku. And, if you're on Lukaku's back, there's absolutely no way you're going to be able to get him off his spot. Just no way. The guy's just too big, he's too strong. And his control of the ball whenever he's in that area is just incredible. But he didn't even need to control it. It came right to him, and he headed it perfectly into the goal. There was no chance Kasper Schmeichel was going to stop it, and that made it 3-1, and pretty much guaranteed Belgium were going to make it through. Of course, the own goal happened to make it 3-2 late in this game, and obviously, it gave Denmark a chance. But the thing is, Denmark needed to win this game. A draw wasn't going to cut it, so they were still 2 goals away. However, not even a minute later, Belgium came back on the counter, and De Bruyne scored a very nice goal in the 87th minute to make it 4-2 and just shut the door on Denmark. Now, you look at the stats, it's very even. 52% possession for Belgium. Like I said, the same amount of shots. Belgium just had 2 extra shots on target, so they were just a bit more clinical in front of goal. So Denmark certainly put up a fight, but there was just no chance they were going to be able to really beat Belgium with them being at the top of their game. So with that, Belgium win their group and move on to the final 4. But now let's move on to the other game in Group 2 that really didn't really have anything big going on with it. It was England versus Iceland. England had no chance of challenging Belgium for the top spot, and Iceland, there was no way they were going to get out of that lower seed, so they were guaranteed to go to League B. But England obviously wanted to make a statement because they feel like they made they lost opportunities, and they absolutely dominated Iceland 4-0, which I was expecting. You got goals from all the young guys. Declan Rice scored in the 20th minute. Mason Mount scored 4 minutes later. Phil Foden scored a brace. He scored 2 goals within 4 minutes late in the game to make it 4-0. Did not help that Iceland picked up a red card in the 54th minute. It just kind of felt like nothing was going Iceland's way, and you look at the stats and it tells you exactly that. I mean, England had 79% possession. I was just watching. I mean, this game kind of reminded me of the Inter Miami game, at least in that first half. It was hard to watch. I mean, you guys heard the way I was talking about it early on in this segment. It was just hard to watch, and I'm sure for any Iceland fan, it was the same thing. To have nearly 80% possession, you're completely dominating the game. The team can't do anything on the offensive end. They can't hold on to the ball. And then you look at the shots. England had 25 shots to Iceland's 2. Iceland didn't have a single one on target. England had 10. 90% pass completion of 767 passes. Iceland completed only 59% of their 206 passes. So it was certainly a tough game for Iceland, and it was certainly expected. I mean, knowing that they missed the opportunity to really win the group with some terrible games early on in this group stage. I just had a feeling that England were going to come out in this game and just fire on all cylinders and score more goals than they have. I literally said it because they had only scored 3 goals in their first 5 games. I said they were going to. I thought it was going to be like 3-0, but it ended up being 4-0. I called it, and it's just that's England. You know, when there's no pressure, they'll play at their. But you know that's what happens when you have a really young team. So England win 4-0, get the 3 points, and still end up third because they ended up losing to Denmark, so they lose that tiebreaker. But next, in Group 1 now, this was a very tight group. I mean, Poland had a huge chance of making it through, but they, like I had said, I believe I said this in the when I was previewing these 2 games. I said Poland were going to lose both games, and that's exactly what happened. Netherlands and Italy took care of business, winning both of their games in this final phase of the group stage. And Italy ultimately defeated Bosnia 2-0 in their final game. They got goals from Andrea Bellotti and Domenico Berardi. And Italy pretty much just dominated this game. They had 64% possession. They had 17 shots to Bosnia's 7. And Bosnia only had 1 of those on target. So they just couldn't get anything going. And most of those shots that they were taking were, either under duress or just, there was obviously a lot of pressure put on them. Italy didn't do that much better. I mean, they had 4 shots on target of the 17. So, a couple of those, mistakes that were happening earlier, it was the same thing in this game. They just couldn't get, a lot of good looks in the final third. And whenever they did, they didn't bring their shooting boots. That's why in 6 games, they only got 7 goals allowed. 7 goals scored. However, the defense once again comes through, allows only 1 shot on target. That's why they've had the best defense, I believe, the best defense in Liga entirely. They've only allowing only 2 goals. And I guess when you look at the teams that they took on, they don't. Obviously Poland has Lewandowski, but they're not, a dynamite scoring team. Only scored 6 goals. Yeah, you look at Netherlands, only scored 7. They don't really have they have Memphis Depay, but they don't really have crazy attacking players. They're more. Their biggest strength is in the defense. But, still, you got to be impressed with what Italy were able to do and put together. Obviously, Bonucci is huge there. I believe Chiellini still starts for them there. They obviously have a lot of players. And for them to be able to win this game 2-0, and them needing those 3 points. This was a very crucial 3 points for them to get, because if they would have even drew this game, they would have lost to Netherlands. They would have had 10 points and been 1 point behind Netherlands and would have lost the lead in the group, because Netherlands, we're going to be talking about that game now, narrowly defeated Poland 2-1 to at least put the pressure on Italy. Obviously, these games were played at the same time, so there was really no pressure put on. It was just, Italy knew they had to get a result, and Netherlands knew they needed to get a result. So early on in this game, it was pretty much all Poland. I mean, not that Netherlands weren't dominating. I mean, the possession was pretty even, but Poland were able to get a really early goal from Józwiak in the 5th minute. But that was pretty much their only shot on target. They had 9 shots in total in this game, only 2 of those on target. Netherlands, on the other hand, had 19 total shots, 6 of those on target, with over 50% possession. So they were, clearly dominating the game way more, had more possession, were able to get more efficient looks in the final third. They just weren't able to really put them home until late in the game. They got a penalty from Memphis Depay in the 77th minute to tie it up. And up until that point, it kind of felt like, could the Netherlands really pull this off? But then, of course, they got the literally 7 minutes later, Jorginho Wijnaldum scored in the 84th minute to make this game, 2-1, and they were able to hold on and make, and just end the game with that. Now, when you really look at the lineups, I mean, Poland had everyone. They had Krychowiak, they had Zielinski, obviously Glick and Lewandowski. That's the most important. And for Netherlands, I mean, obviously they don't have either Matthias de Ligt or Van Dijk, but they still have good defenders. They still have De Vrij, David Blind, and that's the key piece of the defense. You got Frankie de Jong as well, Wijnaldum, Malen, Depay, all those guys, super important pieces, and were able to ultimately help this team win. Luke de Jong was used later on, Donny van de Beek as well. Quincy Promes was never used in this game, but Steven Bergwijn, isn't that Bergwijn? I'm pretty sure that's Steven Bergwijn. No, it's not. Steven Berghuis. Interesting. But either way, still, Netherlands were able to win this game, win 2-1. Didn't look completely dominant. I mean, at least in possession, they weren't dominant, but they were able to get the 3 points. But still, with the mistakes that they made early on, not able to win some games, dropping games. I mean, getting 2 draws and getting a loss. Which team did they ultimately lose to? They lost to Italy. So that was obviously the game that really made the difference in this group, and it really gave Italy those extra points that they needed to get ahead of Netherlands. And with that, Italy makes it through to the Final Four. And with that, we now have our 4 teams that we will be seeing in, I didn't even know this, but we won't be seeing this final being played until October 2021. So I'm really not going to get into, crazy details about, which team is going to win or whatnot. I mean, obviously, we still even need to see the draw to see who plays who. We won't see that until December, so I'll probably have another episode talking about this in more detail later on. But, I mean, we got Italy, Belgium, France, and Spain. We got 4 top-tier countries. It's going to be extremely exciting to see these teams go at it. I mean, obviously, the favorites here, in my opinion, have to go to either Belgium and France. I would hate to see them take on each other in the semifinal before getting to the final. I mean, Italy and Spain are 2 also, really great teams as well. But there are more weaknesses, with them. Spain can't really score at a consistent rate. Italy, also have some consistencies on offense. While Belgium and France are clearly much more complete team, and that final would be incredible. But of course, we don't know yet which teams are going to be taking on each other. It's still going to be really exciting. I mean, you go. First, of course, let me go through the ultimate groups. I mean, I'm way too excited for this to see the final 4 be played out. But let's just go through the groups just to see, how these teams ultimately ended up. And of course, in Group 1, we just talked about it. Italy were able to win out, just get 1 point more than the Netherlands. Obviously, that 1 win that they had on the Netherlands, that 1-0 victory, was able to give them just enough to go ahead of them. Poland, after starting off so strong, having 7 points in their first 4 games, were not able to hold on, losing these finals 2 games. I believe one was to the Netherlands and the other to Italy. Yeah, that was their final 2 games, and they were not able to hold on. They lost 2-0 to Italy, 2-1 to Netherlands, and obviously that ultimately put them in 3rd place. Bosnia were the team that got left behind, only getting 2 draws for 2 points, had a negative 8 goal differential, so obviously they were completely dominated, and they will be moving back down to League B. And that's ultimately what happened in Group 1. Now in Group 2, which we also just talked about, Belgium was able to pretty much take control of this group with 15 points, 5 more than both Denmark and England. Iceland, on the other hand, got absolutely dominated. 6 losses in 6 games. I mean, they allowed 17 goals, only scored 3. So obviously they were completely out of their depth in this game. I mean, Denmark and England both played, at least Denmark played better than what you would have expected. I mean, they scored 8 goals, allowed 7, so their defense wasn't, up to par for taking on teams like England and, of course, Belgium ultimately. And England, I mean, it easily the biggest disappointment here because even though, yes, they got 3 wins, they got a draw, they got 10 points, that's not terrible. It's not enough. That wouldn't have been enough to beat the Netherlands. That would have been 3rd in Group 1. That would have been 3rd in Group 3. That would have been, I guess, that would have been 2nd in Group 4. So 10 points was not enough to win any group. So it's just, a big-time disappointment. Obviously, only scoring 7 goals in 6 games. That's you got to expect more from a team like England that have, just a plethora of players of high quality talent on that team. But yeah, so a big-time disappointment for them. Hopefully, they can turn it around in the Euros. Next, in Group 3, we had the crazy matchup between France and Portugal. We obviously knew it was going to come down between those 2 teams. And ultimately, France were able to get that 1-0 victory over Portugal to give them those crucial 3 points to get them ahead of them. And that was ultimately what made the difference. I mean, Portugal had that 1 loss to France and are behind them in 3 points. That was ultimately what it came down to. For Croatia and Sweden, it was close, but of course that game ended up coming down to which team was going to be able to hold on at the end. Of course, Croatia still ended up they lost their last 2 games, but it did not matter because Sweden weren't able to get the win over France, and Croatia just barely hold on to League A. Sweden now moved back down to League to League B. And of course, that's the team I'm going to be talking about later actually in the next segment. So we're going to be talking about what they can do in the Euros to really turn things around for them. What players they have to really change the script for them. And in Group 4, probably the biggest, the biggest disappointment, you got Germany with just 9 points in 6 games, a historic loss to Spain in the last game of the group stage to really bow them out of a chance in the Final Four. And Spain took care of business, man. I mean, 13 goals scored, only 3 allowed. That's, easily the best in this entire group. I mean, Germany, 13 goals allowed, just terrible in the back line. And that's always been the biggest problem for them. I mean, we know they have, a crazy amount of talent up top, but what can they do in that? Rudiger, Sewell, can they get consistent performances from them enough to really, win games? And that just was not the case. And you knew it was going to be tough for them after they lost that first game to Spain. Or no, it wasn't a loss. It was the draw that they got where they were ahead for most of that game with Werner scoring really early on in the second half, but then an extra pretty much last minute score from Spain to tie it up and really change the trajectory for Germany, because that made the biggest difference. I mean, Spain had has 2-point lead over them, and if Germany would have won that game, they would have won. That would have been it. They would be ahead right now. Even with that historic loss in the last game, they would have won. So just terrible from Germany. I mean, obviously they're going to try to right their wrongs in the Euros, but they're in an even tougher group there. So who knows what happens? I mean, I have no faith in that. in that new generation there, especially the defense. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm excited to see what that draw is gonna show us. Obviously, in December we have to wait and see what happens there. But then we have to wait all the way until October 2021 to see who is the winner of the Nations League. I hate that. I do not. Maybe because of World Cup qualifiers, that's why they have to wait so long. But I mean, that's just way too long. I mean, that's a whole year. That's a whole year. I mean, it's less than a year, but still, that's pretty much a year from now. So whatever. That's gonna wrap it up for this segment. Make sure you guys stick around because when I come back, we're gonna be talking about the top 10 Sweden players right now.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hey guys, welcome back. If you missed the last segment, we talked about the Nations League, obviously the final games that occurred to just tell us which teams are going to be in the Final Four. I reviewed the groups real quick just to see which teams are going to go back to League B. And now we're going to be talking about the top 10 Sweden players right now. Of course, now they're the 19th ranked team in the FIFA World Ranking, so they're the next team that I'm going to be giving a top 10 on. If you guys specifically want a certain country for me to give you a top 10 of, just put it in the comment section and I will get to it. But yeah, let's just get right into it. Starting with number 10, Jordan Larson, the 23-year-old center forward from Spartak Moscow. You look at his club stats, he has 164 matches played, 114 starts, 39 goals, and 15 assists. He has barely played for the national team. He's only got 2 caps and 1 start, but he is a strong center forward who has the ability to score goals from pretty much anywhere on the pitch, but also has the awareness to know when to get his teammates involved. He's shown, he has some incredible highlights to get players in just the right position. But then him individually, I mean, he's got incredible pace and control with the ball, which allows him to make effective runs into the box for easy goals. He's also very solid at set pieces and already gets those opportunities on a regular basis for Spartak Moscow. So that's obviously a great sign. There are rumors that he could be making a big-time move to Barcelona, but I don't think that's the right move for him. Probably maybe go to a smaller club where he can get more playing time and continue his development, because that certainly needs to be in the forefront. I mean, he doesn't even get any time on the national team, and the reason for that is because they already have so many strikers and attacking players on the national team. They don't need any more. But I do feel like Jordan Larson is good enough to be considered a top 10 player for Sweden. He just needs to. I mean, of course, there's a couple guys ahead of him that play his same position, which you'll find out now. But some of them could be leaving the national team or retiring from international football soon. So he could be getting his chance very soon. He's definitely has the talent. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see that anytime now. But next we have Matthias Svanberg at number 9, the 21-year-old center midfielder from Bologna. And you look at his club stats, he's got 93 matches played, 52 starts. He's got 7 goals and 12 assists. He's got 4 caps and 3 starts for the Swedish national team as well, to go with 1 goal and 1 assist. Honestly, one of the best midfielders coming out of Sweden right now. Svanberg has already shown the ability to make big plays for himself and his teammates. Svanberg is your classic box-to-box midfielder. He's got an excellent eye for goal and has an excellent right foot as well. Most of those highlights that I saw of him were usually with his right foot, and he can do pretty much anything with it. Also has a good enough vision to find his teammates in the right spot. Mainly gets involved on the offensive side of the ball, but also puts that effort in the defensive end, which is crucial for any center midfielder that goes box to box, of course. But I feel like Matthias Svanberg certainly has the most potential in the midfield at the moment for Sweden. Most of the other young players that they have are either attacking players, and are really just attacking players. So in terms of the midfield, I feel like Svanberg certainly has a chance to be a part of that for years to come. Next, at number 8, we have the veteran and one of the better Swedish players of all time, Marcus Burge, 34-year-old striker from Krasnodar. You look at his club stats, he's played 356 matches, 274 starts. He's got 156 goals and 43 assists. And for the national team, he's got 66 caps, 49 starts to go with 20 goals and 4 assists. Certainly a very accomplished player in club and country. Marcus Burge has been one of the best attacking players for Sweden for years. And though he's starting to get up there in age, he's still one of their best options at the number 9 spot. And like I said, that's one of the reasons you don't see Jordan Larson playing much on the national team. But yeah, Marcus Burge, he's still starting for them, and for good reason. He makes his money in the box and is an extremely crafty player with or without the ball. Obviously, he doesn't have that athleticism that he had early on in his career, so he still uses that craftiness to really get himself into space, and that's when he really goes to work. He knows, like I said, when to make those runs in the box, to open up passing lanes for his teammates, and is excellent with his Liga play. And even though he's not as athletic, he's still excellent in the air. And on top of that, Burge is also an excellent leader of men and a calming presence for a somewhat young Sweden team. So he's definitely a big time player for them. But since he's starting to get up there in age, I have him a little bit lower on this list. Some people might have him higher because he's such an intricate part of the attack. But I have him at number 8. Next, at number 7, we have Robin Quaison, the 27-year-old attacking midfielder from Mainz. He's got 234 matches played and 162 starts to go with 44 goals and 15 assists in the club level. And for Sweden, he's got 17 caps, 12 starts to go with 5 goals and 1 assist. You got another attacker here for Quaison. Adds a bit of flair to this list that we have not seen yet. Quaison is an excellent goal scorer with incredible attacking instincts, as he can score just as good outside the box as he does inside. He's much quicker than what you would expect from someone his size, has excellent control of the ball, and is extremely versatile, as he can play in the midfield as well as on the flanks, and that's been extremely important for Mainz. He's been an extremely important player for them for the past 2 or 3 seasons, and is a big reason why they haven't been relegated. So his work rate is also top tier, as he loves to make runs in between the defensive line and cause problems for the opposition. And that's honestly one of the main reasons why Robin Quaison is one of the better players on this team. He can make ridiculous runs in the box and certainly makes things easier for his team. Hasn't had a lot of time with the national team. 17 caps is still pretty good, and to go with 5 goals in those 17 caps, that's a pretty solid conversion rate. But you need to see more of him, and he's certainly going to be a very important piece for them going into the Euros. At number 6, we have probably one of the better prospects, he is one of the better prospects for Sweden, Alexander Isak, the 21-year-old center forward from Real Sociedad. You look at his club stats, he's got 105 matches played, 62 starts, already has 39 goals and 11 assists. And for Sweden, he's got 14 caps, 7 starts, and 4 goals. Now, Isak, he broke out with Stockholm early on in his career as he scored 10 goals when he was just 16 years old. He made a big-time move to Borussia Dortmund, And I kind of remember when he was, really hyped up as that new generational, striker or attacker, but it never really worked out. His development stalled. He wasn't getting a lot of time with Borussia Dortmund. He got moved down to the youth team, or the B team, and just never really got it going with Borussia Dortmund. However, he then moved to the Dutch league at 18, recaptured that form with a 13-goal, 6-assist performance, which earned him that move to Real Sociedad. So he was able to make a move, to a big league and a big club once again. And from there, it's pretty much the rest been history. I mean, he hasn't had, one of those big time seasons like he had in the Dutch league, but he's still very young, just 21 years old. And has a lot more development to go. But you look at what, just his framework and his play style. He's got a great eye for goal. Can score with either foot and is really good with his head as well. And pretty much from all sorts of angles. He's mainly a target man, but does have that pace to get by defenders with ease. And has great control with the ball. He won't really beat them with dribble moves. Won't really take anybody one-on-one. But in terms of his pace and just getting by guys, and really being in the right position at the right time, he certainly has that to spare and will be one of the more important players for Sweden for years to come. Hopefully he can continue that development. I mean, of course, he's playing for Real Sociedad right now, the best team in La Liga at the moment. And he is playing regularly for them. He's got about 7 or 8 starts in their first, I believe it was, that's pretty much all the games they played. So he's certainly getting regular time with them, and that is a very important part of his development. And the fact that he's actually contributing, that's huge. I believe he's got already a goal and an assist for them early on in this season, so he'll need to continue that, and that's why he's at number 6. Number 5, well, now you're going to start getting some of those guys that are already contributing heavily for the Sweden team, because a couple of those other guys, obviously Marcus Burge does contribute a lot, but he's getting up there in age. But these guys are more in their prime. And of course, we do have one very, very grizzled veteran, and then we have one very young prospect that's going to be probably the star for Sweden for years to come. But let's just get right into it. Number 5, we have Victor Claesson, the 28-year-old left winger from Krasnodar. You look at his club level stats. He's got 263 matches played, 233 starts, 75 goals, and 47 assists. And for the national team, he's got 32 caps, 21 starts, 5 goals, and 3 assists. Now, the first thing that I noticed about Claesson is how versatile he is. He can be used in the midfield, on the flanks as a winger, even up top as a striker, as he certainly has that eye for goal. However, his main position is on the left wing. He is a very smart passer with good vision. Normally prefers to play the short passes and link up with his teammates to get into better position. He won't really wow you with his flair, but he does have a smoothness to his game. Doesn't usually like to take on defenders one-on-one, but he always makes the right play more often than not, and is certainly a reliable player for Sweden, and will be one of the most important players for them going into the Euros. And it's going to be someone that Sweden looks to more often than not. Number 4, we have the Iceman, Victor Lindelof, 26-year-old center back from Manchester United. He's got 212 matches played, 203 starts, and 4 goals and 4 assists on the club level. And for the national team, he's got 38 caps, 37 starts, and 3 goals. An extremely calming presence for Sweden in the back. Lindelof is by far the best defender they currently have. If you haven't noticed, I haven't talked about a single defender in this entire list up until this point. And that's because they're pretty dry at that position. And despite but for Lindelof, he certainly makes up for it. And despite having an extremely big frame, Lindelof is excellent with the ball at his feet. It should be no surprise as he began his career as a midfielder, and then he even played some right back before ultimately making that permanent move to center back, where he said he feels much more comfortable. He really likes to make those long passes and counter with a high press. and counter a high press from the opposition extremely well. Rarely gets uncomfortable under pressure, and that's why they call him the Iceman, because he's super cool. When he has the ball at his feet, and he has to make a decision, he usually, more often than not, makes the right one, and that's what you want from your premier number one choice center back, and that's what he gives them. Next, at number 3, maybe I'm just biased here, and that's why I have this guy at number 3, but I have Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe he should be number 4, but that's as far down as I would go for Zlatan. I mean, I almost had him as high as 2 on this list, and even when I was first thinking, I was like, maybe he's number 1. But no, I realized was a little crazy, because he certainly isn't the same player, the same star that he was early on in his career, or even a few years ago. He's certainly losing a bit there, but he certainly still got it. And if he hadn't retired from the national team, he would still be the number 1 striker for this team. I mean, he's got 724 matches played, 653 starts to go with 451 goals and 165 stats at the club level. And for Sweden, he's got 76 caps, 72 starts to go with 43 goals and 8 assists. I mean, easily the greatest Swedish player of all time. And it's just unfortunate that he retired. I think I did hear rumors. I saw it I heard it on a broadcast. Maybe they were just talking just to talk, but there were rumors that he might decide to come back to the Sweden team, just come out of retirement for the Euros. Although, I mean, man, at that point he'd be 40 years old. It's Zlatan, so I mean, there's nothing he can't do. But it's just crazy to believe that he's, in my opinion, the 3rd best Swede player at almost 40 years old. I mean, obviously, I don't have to talk him up. I mean, he's one of the greatest strikers of all time. Just an absolute clinical finisher and an underrated playmaker. And though he's not as athletic as he used to be, he can still take on defenders one-on-one with his incredible ball control. And I feel like that would just be invaluable for this Sweden team, who doesn't have a clear-cut number 1, or I guess number 9, I should say. Marcus Burge technically takes that spot. Victor Claesson scores, regularly for them, and not regularly. I mean, he's only got 5 goals for the senior team, but still, Zlatan would absolutely be their number 1, their first choice striker. It just sucks that he doesn't play for them anymore. But yeah, that's why he comes in at number 3. At number 2, at first I was thinking of putting him number 1, but then I realized I'm hyping him up way too much. But I got Dejan Kulusevski, 20-year-old right winger from Juventus. In 50 matches, 40 starts, he's got 12 goals and 9 assists at the club level. Only got 8 caps and 5 starts for Sweden, and he does have a goal for them. He really broke out for Parma last season on loan from Juve. I mean, just his ability with the ball. I mean, he's not going to wow you with his pace. He does have long strides. He's a very long player, so he can certainly get by opponents with his acceleration. But he's not going to wow you with any sort of athleticism. He doesn't have a high vertical, but he's just so technically gifted, and he's got all the skill sets. I mean, the vision, the scoring ability to be able to become a premier number 10 throughout his career. Right now, he's being used more as a right winger, which is understandable, especially at Juve and Sweden. It makes sense because, of course, they have the guy coming up. They usually put him as the number 10, but I just see Kulusevski as the future star for Sweden, and they can't really complain about that. I mean, the kid's a stud. He had an incredible year for Parma last year, and this year is already looking like he is a regular starter for Juve, but he's going to be a huge piece for them for years to come, and Sweden is certainly lucky to have him. And at number 1, we have Emile Forsberg. I mean, this was kind of close. I mean, because I change my rankings every now and then on this one because there is no clear-cut number one. I mean, Zlatan was that for a long time, but obviously he's 39 years old. So I had to give this to Emile Forsberg. I mean, he is the premier playmaker for Sweden, is an absolute master at set pieces as well, whether it's corners, free kicks, penalties. Forsberg is the man for Sweden. You look at his stats in 339 matches played, 273 starts. He's got 83 goals and 62 assists. For the national team, he's got 53 caps, 47 starts, 8 goals, and 2 assists. I mean, he is the leader for RB Leipzig and has been there since their inaugural season. Has been an integral part to their success in their short existence. I mean, he had an incredible season that first year there. He had like 8 goals and like 19 assists. Hasn't really put up stats to that extent since then, but is still an absolute integral piece for that team. He's excellent at attacking spaces in the defense and can win one-on-one matchups with ease before making the pinpoint pass to set up his teammates. He can certainly score goals. I mean, he's got 83 goals in his career, but his main ability is his vision and and just to be able to get his teammates involved. That is why Emile Forsberg comes in at number 1. The best Swedish player right now, and will certainly be at the forefront of their Euro journey next season, or next year, I should say. So that's going to wrap it up for this segment. I hope you guys enjoyed. Of course, I always love to bring you guys this content, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. And I'm going to keep on bringing it to you guys. I know we got some domestic games coming up, and we obviously got Champions League and Europa League coming up next week, and I just can't wait to get into all of that. But that's going to wrap it up. So as always, thank you for listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I would really appreciate it. Thank you and have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.